So my question is, you keep talking about God tells you something.
Yep.
So when he responds or she responds, is it something that's audio
No,
that you receive? Is it
never.
something? So
Never audio.
so for me, I'm wondering. Because sometimes there's a perception that for you to say that this is what I'm feeling or hearing from God, that it needs to, I don't know, like be elaborate. But how does it become elaborate if it's not?
Yeah, good question. So let's just look for a moment. Um, this is really tomorrow's discussion, but let's look at it a little bit. The human soul has a number of what I would classify as attributes and qualities. Very few humans on earth are connected to any of them. The majority of us are taught from a very young age to disconnect from them. Right? So in other words, there's qualities that you've been built with, that every human's been built with at every time in human history. We've all been built with the same qualities and attributes. I'm not talking about your personality or your nature. I'm talking about things that your human soul is possible to do. Attributes and qualities that make certain things possible. And the unfortunate fact is on earth that the majority of us are completely disconnected from them all, of these qualities. And instead what we do is we've been focused, and if you think of all of your education on earth, it's been focused on developing your intellect. Intelligence is one of the attributes of the soul, but it's only one, what I'd call intellectual intelligence. So what humans have done is they've neglected, because they don't believe in a soul, they don't believe there are souls, they have a tendency to neglect the development of the attributes and qualities of the soul in favour of the attributes and qualities of your physical body. So the attributes and qualities of your physical body are that you can hear, what else? See, taste, or you could say smell as well, can you? Yeah. You can feel sensations, physical sensations, yes. What's the last one? Isn't there 5 senses? What's the 5th one?
Taste and smell are 2 different ones, mate.
See, hear, taste and smell, feel.
Taste and smell are different, yeah.
They're actually not separate qualities, but anyway. Okay. So we have these sensory apparatus in our physical form that almost all of our education is focused upon. What you can see, what you can hear, what you can taste, smell, and what you can touch. Right? So there are certain invisible things we believe in only because they have met the criteria of these senses. An example of that is the wind, air. You believe in it even though it's still. You know, when you move your arm, you can feel something going across all of those sensory apparatus of your body. Oh, I'm moving through something. It's like, we call it air, but you can, when you go like that, when you wave your arm, you can feel the air, even if there's no wind, feel the air against your skin as you move. So you know you're moving through something. So now I believe in an atmosphere because I can feel it. I can feel there's an atmosphere. So I've focused my development on these things. And of course, I've used my intellect to make assessments, haven't I? Yep. So I've used my intellect to make assessments about those things. Now that's well and good if we're only a human body. But if we're a spirit and also potentially a soul, then these things are not going to work. So if we are a human soul, then these things that I've been using to assess the truth of my existence have limitations. Can you see? And because they create limitations and I'm very focused on them, I have a strong tendency to ignore the qualities and attributes of the higher forms of existence. So that our higher forms of existence are, as people, are our spirit body and our soul. Those things are almost completely neglected in terms of our development, right from a child. In fact, most parents, like if a child says, "Oh, I see a monster in the corner," the presumption of the parent is that's imaginary, right? Because we've been taught to assess everything in this intellectual feel, touch, taste manner, using our sensory apparatus of our physical form, that we neglect the possibility that what if our child is actually seeing a form in the corner? And what is that form? And how is it that my child sees it but I don't? No, very few of us contemplate that on earth. We almost do the opposite. We say the child must be mistaken, right? And that's because we as humans have gone so far in the development of these sensory apparatus in terms of determining the truth of our existence that we've neglected the potentiality of even experimenting with other parts of ourselves. And so effectively, we've turned them off. Turned off our soul, turned off our spirit body and its apparatus. And we're functioning now in a very physical manner because we've limited the ability of growth. You could say these things are still they're not just at the point they were when we were first born. They're even in a worse state because we've been taught to ignore them. See, when a child is first born, it's not taught to ignore them. So example is, who did we just see earlier who had the...
Hester has a,
Hester had... Which one? Hester was a little child though.
the baby.
Yeah, who's got the 2-year-old?
They might be outside.
Well, about 18 months old. Yeah. She's outside at the moment. But,
yeah.
She was looking at me and seeing the spirits around me. She wasn't even looking at me. So when I said hello to her, she smiled at me, but then you could see her focus of her eyes go to the spirits around me. Now, she can't say that because not able to put that into language yet, but you could see her focus of change, saw the spirits and then come back to me, right? Now, as a parent, there's many times where that's probably even happened to you. And you go, well, that's strange, but that's it. Like, because we're focused on only things we see, things we hear, we taste, we see. So spirits can actually talk to you audibly, right? God, remember I said won't, even though God could, he doesn't. But spirits can talk to you audibly. You could experiment with that, right? But if you're taught to not do so, then you won't. You don't even think of it as a possibility. So the big problem for us as humans is there's a whole group, you could say the majority, in fact, of our soul is unexplored. The potentialities that we have existing in our being, in our soul, are generally completely unexplored. And as a result of that, we only experiment with this.
So would mediumship then fall as part of the development of the spirit body, or as a
spirit body? Yes.
Spirit body? Okay.
Yes, it is. So mediumship is a part of the development of the spirit body. Yes. Yep. Of course, you can also develop it with the soul, right? Because the soul has a superset. It's interesting with the way the bodies are made, because basically you've got, remember I've drawn this, many of you would have seen this, where you've got your soul. If I'm a man, I've got my soul, half of the soul, and I've got my two bodies. Each body has a superset of qualities that the previous body has. So in other words, the spirit body can do all of those things: smell, see, taste, hear, feel, and then it can do a lot of additional things. Or when it sees things in a greater scope. So an example of that is the spirit body's eyes can see beyond the physical light spectrum. So you know how we see that physical light spectrum of colour, ultraviolet, just beyond ultraviolet and underneath infrared, like we can see that spectrum of colour. Well, the spirit bodies can see infrared and see ultraviolet because their eyesight has a superset of capability that the physical body doesn't have. Yep. So this body, the spirit body, has a superset of capabilities that the physical body doesn't have, and the soul has a superset of abilities that both bodies don't have. And then the unified soul, the two halves together, have a superset of that as well, right? So the reality is, though, for the majority of us, the only thing we experiment with most of our life on earth is that, the physical body. And it's only when we die that we start experimenting with the next body. And then for many people, they only experiment with the next body for the rest of their life. And they never experiment with the soul. So those people reach the sixth sphere of their development in the spirit world and never progress beyond it. Right? So we got to remember when we're talking about these things that the human soul is a part of us that is the substantial part of us, and the two bodies are really appendages to that soul. But the more we utilize the senses in the bodies, the less oftentimes we tune into the senses of the soul. And as a result of that, there's a whole lot of information that becomes unattainable. Truths that we could learn that we don't learn about because it becomes unattainable unless we develop the senses of the soul. Now, there is a sense of the soul that all of you have some development of, and that is love. Because all of you have had some experience with it. By the time you're in your 20s usually, you've had some experience with love. And that is a soul quality, a soul sense. You know, when you feel love, that is a soul sense being felt. So, but there are other soul senses that we are very detuned from. And of course, the more fear we have and the more anger we have and other qualities like that, other emotions we have like that, the more detuned we get from the soul senses. But as I said, we'll talk about that tomorrow, right? But it does have a relationship between this question, because there are certain things in this question that have to be determined, but they can only be determined with this apparatus, the soul apparatus. So this is where we run into some problems because we've detuned from the soul's apparatus, and the net result is we don't feel some of these things because these are all soul qualities. Remember, God is not in human form, therefore not of a spirit body, not of a material body, so therefore must be of what is similar to what we call to soul. And this is why in the celestial spirit world we call him the oversoul, the great soul, the being who is soul, right? And if that is the case, you can see also that if God made humans in his image, then it's only the soul that is in the image, not the bodies. Yep. Can you See that? Now, if the soul is in the image of God, then it would also make sense that the only communication method is from soul to soul. And any other form of communication with God will not work. Right? So when people talk about talking to God and hearing God with their audible senses, they're not hearing God, because the only form of communication that can work with God is a soul to soul communication, which happens at much more maybe what I need to say is this about hearing something. What you hear is very, very open to interpretation, isn't it? So, an example, I'm speaking to you now in English. Many of your natural languages are not English. And some of you are French, and some of you are Dutch, and some of you are German, and someone's from Denmark. So what's that language? Danish. And so all different languages. And so what I'm saying to you is very open to interpretation, isn't it? And your interpretation of the words I'm using. Soul to soul communication is not open to interpretation. It's more powerful. It's more defined. And in that way, it's more accurate. And this is why God uses it, because he's saying, what's the point of me saying things in words that are, to you are just going to be jumble, a different language? It's better if God can speak to you through this soul connection, through qualities. So determining the existence of God, you can also see, and this is something in the first century that I realized very quickly, was that it would make no sense for me to try to communicate with God in the way I was talking to people.
Yeah, I understand, because when I translate here to my mother tongue,
Yep.
it actually means feel.
Yeah.
So the same word is used for feel and hear. So when now you translate it to English, immediately I associate hear with ears, and I then expect to hear an audio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, you could say the soul has a functioning apparatus, just like your physical body has, which allows it to hear, but it only allows it to hear soul to soul communications. Nothing else. And soul to soul communications don't happen with voice. They happen with feelings. So unless you've developed your feelings, you're going to really struggle with your soul to soul communication.